Good evening and welcome to our midweek Facebook. Today is September 25th, Wednesday, and we are here at Lake Junaluska.
Yeah.
Is that how you pronounce it, Lake Junaluska?
Pretty close. Yeah, Junaluska, I think, is the way it's done. It's a beautiful retreat center in the Smoky Mountains, near Maggie Valley, about halfway, well, a little ways away from Asheville. Absolutely gorgeous, as you can see in the background.
Yeah. And this is we're at a Unity retreat,
right?
And this is what, Unity of Mid-Atlantic States.
Yeah, it's called UMMAS, so Unity Ministers of the Mid-Atlantic States, and it's something that it's North and South Carolina, Georgia, and Tennessee. But other people come. We've got people here from Texas,
right?
You know, people here from Alabama, things like that. And it's a retreat that the UMMAS group puts on every year in the Smoky Mountains, and they've been doing it for 20, 25 years.
Yeah, they talked about that yesterday at the last night at the opening service ceremony. And also one of the things that they mentioned is that it was at one time it was just designed for the ministers. Is that true? And then they kind of opened it up to the regular.
Right. Well, the whole idea was a ministers' retreat. It was an opportunity for the ministers to get together and kind of share their experiences and just have some communion time together. And of course,
they support each other.
That's exactly what it was. And of course, word spread, and then a few board members would come, and then they said, well, heck, let's just open it up for everybody.
Right.
So for many years, the venue, the actual place we've had it, has actually moved several times. It used to be at Black Mountain, and then it moved over to Canoga, which was a 1,400-acre Episcopal retreat center very close to here. And this year it's at Lake Junaluska.
Yeah.
So,
and before we go any further, it's important for me to introduce ourselves. For me to introduce myself, my name is Shannon LeBryan. I'm from Unity of Chattanooga, and you are
Reverend Doug and I'm also from Unity of Chattanooga.
And we don't have our so it's important that we let viewers know who we are. And so, Doug, tell me a little bit about the planning. Like, what goes into the planning of the topic? Like, what goes into the planning?
Well, what happens every year is a group gets together. It's the planning committee, and it's usually UMMAS has a board or a president of that organization, VP, secretary, and treasurer. And as a group, we get together, and then they form a retreat group. And that retreat group plans all of this. And the first thing that they do is they look for a speaker, a keynote speaker, somebody that has been there, done that, is relatively well known, and usually from a larger church. And that's the keynote speaker. But the keynote does 2 or 3 different sessions. One typically with the ministers, on Tuesday morning, and then they'll do something for everybody. And then after that, there are workshops put on by various ministers within the UMMAS group. And so you'll see that this afternoon, a little later this afternoon. So there's the keynote speaker, there's a lot of music that goes along with it. We have some very, very talented musicians within the UMMAS group, within the Unity churches, throughout the South. And they do the music, and then the keynote speakers, and then the ministers themselves put on various.
I'm curious about the name. It's called The Art of Spiritual Transformation, Saying Yes to Change. Where does that come from? Like, do you guys sit down and think about what the theme is going to be? And where did you guys get that theme from? What is it?
The ethers, and in other words, what happens is there's a theme every year about what it's going to be about, and then we tell that theme to the keynote speakers, and they put their talk around that.
Wow.
And typically what happens is the UMMAS board and the retreat team get together and they say, well, what do we want it to be about? And change and transformation is really the core of the New Thought movement and what Unity is all about. It's about transformation. And so and we've had different ones over the years. But the team picks that concept.
Well, what was interesting to me is that when I got here, the first two speakers that I saw were people of color.
Yeah.
And they were very young.
Yes.
These people were, I think, 80s babies.
Yeah.
I'm a 70s baby.
Yeah.
And I consider myself kind of young.
Yeah.
But these two speakers were, one was a Mexican-American woman.
Right.
I think her name is Reverend Gaza.
Yeah.
And the other one is
Christine Gaza.
Christine Gaza, yeah.
Yeah.
I think she's from Unity of Nashville.
Nashville.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then the other woman is
Greta.
Greta Counts, I think her name
Greta
is.
Counts, yeah.
From-
Unity of South Atlanta.
Yeah. And they're both very young.
Yeah.
I mean, when I looked at them, and I looked at the audience, I'm like, wait a minute here. I mean, the audience are like 1960s and older.
And older.
You got these two young people of color,
Right.
speaking to
The group.
That group, and they came out, and some of them came out. Well, both of them came out in cheerleading outfits,
Right. With pom-poms.
with pom poms
Yeah.
and roller skates,
Yeah.
and talking about change.
Yeah.
That's deep. That's
Yeah.
really deep.
Yeah.
What is that about? Like, I mean,
Well,
that's not by coincidence. I mean,
No.
to open an act like that.
well, it was up to them.
Right.
You know,
Okay.
and both of them are very well given their age,
Mhm.
okay,
Mhm.
but they're very vibrant
Mhm.
and they're full of life
Mhm.
as you saw that. So they got together and they said, well, let's just do something different,
Mhm.
and that's what they decided
Mhm.
to do.
Mhm.
And it was funny,
Mhm.
and oftentimes when you get something that's out of the box
Yeah,
like that, at
yeah.
least for people like me,
Yeah. Yeah.
it grabs your attention.
Yeah. Yeah.
So-
yeah, it definitely grabbed my attention.
Yeah.
And so you guys had a little workshop before we got here,
Right.
and that was with the minister. What's his Falk, I think.
D.E. Park
D.E.
is his
Park.
name. And he's the senior pastor of Spirit and Truth Sanctuary in Atlanta, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And he is our keynote
Mhm.
for this retreat.
Mm-hmm.
And D.E. Park, he's about I think he's 49 years old, 50 or something
Another
like that.
kind of young guy.
Relatively young.
Yeah.
And he was born and raised in the Pentecostal church,
Mhm.
the charismatic
Mhm.
movement,
Mhm.
and his uncle was also Pauk, was the last name, and had I believe the second largest church in the country.
Wow.
You know,
Wow.
right behind Joel Osteen,
Mhm.
you know, out of Houston. But charismatic, Pentecostal, and for those of you who are familiar with that, it's very fundamental.
Mm-hmm.
You know, very very traditional.
Right.
And what happened is his uncle passed,
Mhm.
and he was kind of the heir apparent.
Heir of the
all right?
throne. Yeah.
But what happened was, as he was going through all the ritual and the dogma and the beliefs, something changed. And he said, wait a minute, you know, that there is a different way. There's something else here going on.
Wow.
And as a young man, and I've shared with many of the people who come to our church that, you know, from the time I was 4 years old, I was doing kind of meditations, getting thoughts that weren't mine, things like that. And he started sharing the same thing, and basically said, wait a minute, there's a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Now the beauty of that, and we have ministers in Unity that are formerly Pentecostal and from the charismatic movement. As a matter of fact, Greta is from that.
Right. Unity of Nashville.
Yeah.
Earlier.
Yeah. Well, Greta is from South Atlanta. Okay.
Oh, Greta's from.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Sorry.
We have ministers from that, and the beauty of that is that as a young person, they were just absolutely they knew the Bible backwards and forwards, right? And that they knew the idiosyncrasies of it, and then something took hold that said, wait a minute, there's a different interpretation
Right.
than what's going on here.
What I learned growing up. Yeah.
Exactly. And many of them have made the switch. They started reading other things, and as they read other things and became open, then slowly what happened is they found unity.
Right. Yeah.
Now, D.E. Park was asked to speak at some unity churches because his message was changing. And the more unity churches he spoke at, and got to know the unity people, he said, hey, wait a minute.
Right.
You know, this is what it's all about. And what he did, and he'll talk a little bit about this afternoon, but what he did is he basically took a very large 12,000 on a Sunday, a very large Pentecostal charismatic church, and slowly took that group into New Thought,
Wow.
which is where they are today. And he started that. He told the story yesterday. It was his second Sunday, and he said something told him, or he felt, you know, there's a lot of people in this movement who have been left out. And he thought of the LBGTQ movement, and so he started talking about that. And he said, I realize when this topic comes up, there's going to be some change.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some people are going to leave. We're going to attract others, but he felt that was the right way to do it.
And not everybody's been successful with making that change. I think, and I'm not going to say. I'm not going to say they haven't been successful, but not everyone has been able to move most of their parishioners to that new space. I know Bishop Carlton Pearson, who was a charismatic evangelical minister here in the South. Well, in the South. He kind of got that awakening, like the gentleman you're talking about got, but he was kind of like, you got to go. Right. He lost his entire congregation as a result of it. Yeah, and so it's good that this guy has been successful at transitioning the people into it.
And one of the things that he said was, now yesterday he was speaking just to the ministers. Okay, the first day here. Just so that everybody knows, the ministers come on Monday, and Monday afternoon is the time for us to just get together and talk amongst ourselves. And then Tuesday morning is a time for the ministers to get with the keynote speaker, and then he talks to the ministers. And the message will probably be a little different than what he presents this afternoon, but he's talking to us minister to minister, his experience, that sort of thing. And then in the afternoon, everybody else comes in, and here we are on Wednesday, and we've got the full-blown program. So anyways, one of the things he was saying is, you know, change is inevitable. It's going to happen. And so when you start with a message, especially a new message, a message that hasn't been heard, you're going to have some fallout.
Right.
And some people are going to leave, and some people are going to be attracted to it. And he said, and that's okay. What you need to be concerned about is what's going on in here, the message that has been given to you for you to give out. He said that's important. And he said if you remain true to yourself and you remain true to your guidance, it's going to work out.
It's going to work out. Yeah.
One way or the other.
It's going to work out. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this is about, based on what I'm seeing, it's about a systematic change to some extent, and then also about a personal change.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I got from
transformation is a personal change.
Right.
You know.
Right. But also there was a message here to some extent that spoke around systematic unity kind of. That's what I felt. There's a shift kind of in unity also going on. As far as the being more inclusive, you know.
Well, there is. And I've been in unity for 45 years, okay? And what I can tell you is so it goes back to like the late 70s. And the 70s, 80s, 90s, unity was pretty white, all right? Older crowd, typically. And that's kind of the way it was. But that was the demographic of the population. And what's been happening lately is they have opened that up to be much more inclusive. All right, they're embracing the diversity movement, that sort of thing. It's not that they didn't do that in the past. Is so much that they didn't emphasize it.
They didn't emphasize it so
and
much.
Now there's an emphasis on that about being inclusive. And bringing everybody in. As a matter of fact, in the early years of unity, some of the African Americans that came kind of felt the difference, you know, and they went out and they started their own churches. And some of which have been very, very successful.
Well, their own movements actually. Some of them moved away from unity and started their own.
Well, it's not so much they moved away from unity, is that And I think you might remember this from, I mean, years ago, the most segregated time in America was
Sunday.
11 o'clock on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
You know, you had black churches, you had white churches, and very rarely did you have a church that reflected the community.
Right. Yeah.
You know, well, and so the people of color went and founded their own churches, and they attracted
People of color, yeah.
people of color, you know, and that was fine because they got the message out. And now what's happening is Unity is saying, let's be more inclusive.
Yeah.
You know, let's try to do so. That's the shift that I've seen. But in terms of the philosophy,
It's the philosophy stayed the same. Yeah. Just
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been the same. Yeah.
Exactly.
But it's just behaving differently.
that's right.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that I think that we're on the cutting edge, Unity of Chattanooga. I think that we're on the cutting edge of behaving differently. I just want to, I just want to emphasize that. I mean, we got a great message. We got a great minister.
Thank you.
And we got a great board, a diverse board of people.
We do.
Yeah. And we are involved in the community. We're doing things, people that's different than we are. And,
Right.
And so we're definitely.
And one thing I would say about our group is I have seen more enthusiasm and more involvement with the small group that we have than I have seen in a lot of the other Unity churches,
Wow.
or even the church that I was involved with from 2004 to 2014,
Wow.
which was also Unity of Chattanooga. But you know, in those days, you almost had to pull teeth to
Get people moving.
yeah. And here it's much
Yeah,
different.
we may not have the money, but we want to get involved. Right?
That's
we
right.
don't have a lot of money, but we want to get involved in it, and the money's coming.
And that's
The
where
money's
it starts.
Yeah,
You know that's where it starts.
Yeah. So the workshops today are around transformation.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm excited to get involved in those workshops.
Yeah. And the other thing that's going to be interesting is D.E. Paulk will be giving I guess a two hour presentation from 9 to 11 this morning, and that's going to be dynamic.
Wow.
I mean, he is a great speaker. He's funny, and at the same time, the road that he has traveled is phenomenal. He's going to talk about transformation.
Yeah.
He's going to talk about his own transformation, and
Yeah,
and
and
it's an
when you come
excellent
to
story.
places like this, you come to these kind of workshops, it kind of propels you to look at yourself. What is it that I could do that I'm not doing? What is it that I'm doing that's not serving me, that I need to get
Right.
rid of, and transform to a higher
Right.
consciousness? You
Right.
know, and so these workshops give us an opportunity to look at that. I was out this morning looking for a place to do our podcast, and I
Right.
saw people walking, and I walk my dog every morning. But I saw people actually walking for the purpose of exercising. And I'm
Yeah.
like, maybe I can start doing that after I walk the dogs.
There you go.
So when you get to these kind of environments, it kind of helps you to look at yourself, reflect on what you could do differently.
The other thing that happens,
And
at
real
least,
quick, when we
Right.
do that, I think what happens is we get a chance to see God. When we get outside the box. I mean, we have the opportunity to see God when we're in our box, but when we get outside the box, we can see a different message. We go down a different block. If we go down the same block every day, we see the same thing.
That's right.
But if we go down a different block, it's like, oh my God, what's going on here?
Different
Yeah,
stuff.
Yeah, and that's the good thing.
One of the opportunities at a retreat like this is rather than going, at least for me, rather than going to each and every workshop and having a schedule and then going back to a schedule, what I often do is I'll just take time for myself, and I'll just, the phones aren't ringing, you don't have the to-do list,
Right.
and you just kind of take a breath and take a walk and do just kind of hang out with yourself or with others, and that can be as enlightening
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
anything else. You have a time to reflect.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
And
all
one of the ministers said, she mentioned try doing something different, like taking a shower in a different pattern.
yeah.
That'll bring up something different for you. So it's all about just trying different things and looking at yourself.
Well, one of the things they talked about with change, and what Greta mentioned last night, she said you've got to be open to change. You've got to be willing to change the dogma. You've got to be willing to change your
the
routine,
routines, yeah.
and the things that you
They
go
lock
through.
us in. We don't realize how much they lock us into
Absolutely.
our thought patterns. It's the same all the time. And if
so-
you change one little thing about those routines, it can change. It can be powerful.
You can start the landslide.
Yeah, yeah.
I will tell you a story. There was a transformational or inspirational speaker many years ago who got quite a group together, and he said, we're going to talk about change, we're going to talk about the next morning. Now everybody paid like $1,000 to, you know, or more to come to this, and he said, and he was just talking about this, we've got to be able and willing to change. So he looked at the group, and this was the night before the whole thing was going to start, and he said, what I want you to do tonight is when you go home, when you go into the bathroom, everybody sees a roll of toilet paper on the okay, and it either pays off to the top or pays off to the bottom.
Right.
And every one of us has a way that that's done. Okay, what I want you to do tonight is I want you to turn that around.
Right.
All right. And people laughed and they said they would do it, but he said it's about change.
Yeah.
All right, you got to be able to. So, anyways, the next day, everybody gathered. They're all excited, and he said, "All right, how many people changed
The
toilet paper
roll.
last night? I want you to stand up, okay?" And about half to 3/4 of them stood up, but not everybody.
Right.
And he said, "Okay, for all of those who have just stood up, who changed your toilet paper last night, I want you to go out those double doors, take a left, and go down to another room down at the end, and we will start shortly." For everybody else who did not do that, please see the registrar out front. We will give you your money back.
You're not willing to do shit.
That's right.
You ain't willing.
That's right. If you can't do this simple thing, you're not going to be able, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that was the whole idea behind what Greta was talking about.
Yeah. Those little things.
Little things.
But it's important to get involved and get it started.
That's right.
And one of the songs they sung was Salt and Pepper Push It. Push it real good. Yeah. Doug, I want to thank you.
All right.
Thank you for coming out.
All right.
I want to thank our viewers. If you have any questions about what we talked about, or if you have a topic that you want us to talk about, send us an email. I'm going to put it up real quick to Unity of Chattanooga. Contact at unitychattanooga.org. Doug, you have anything before we close? You want to tell me about our Sunday service on Sunday at Tom Withers?
This coming Sunday, we're at the Red Bank Community Center, and we have Armand and Angelina, okay, and they are a group that's been around for many years. They're excellent, beautiful music, and a great message.
Yeah,
So,
that's this Sunday at 11 a.m. That's
Right.
September 25th. And they're presenting There's No Such Thing as Rejection. No such thing as rejection.
Okay.
Yeah, they're going to be presenting that. Again, Doug, I want to thank you for coming out and hanging out with me. And we'll see
at
you guys.
beautiful Lake Junaluska.
Junaluska. We'll see you guys next week.
Okay, take care.
Not yet.